At least for me, I'm good to get started whenever everyone else is.
Yeah, we're ready. I don't know if Berkeley's back yet.
Sorry, I literally just got back. Give me just 1 second.
Oh, what topic was chosen for this round, by the way?
Are we unmuted? We chose rare earth elements.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, I'm ready.
Cool. In that case, is there anyone not ready? Sounds good. The plan, the United States federal government should substantially increase its investment in rare earth elements mining by investing $1 billion into agro mining and Solvency I plan passes through normal means. The money goes through the Pentagon RE grant system, which is the only existing program for the distribution of funds for RE mining. B is where this is a weird topical increase because we're using an existing mechanism. C is the only topical form of only plants can directly mine REs. Other operations can only mine rare earth minerals. 2 is that agro mining is the process of using plants to mine minerals from the soil. Fast growing plants or fungi that naturally accumulate high levels of certain rare earth minerals like a fern, a Dicynopterus linearis, which can pull huge amounts of lanthanum from the ground. There are plant in areas with a large RE deposit. The elements in the plants are then processed by incineration or by leaching, in which the plant is submerged in an aqueous solution that allows the metals to seep out of it. Three's investment solves the reason agro mining hasn't been implemented is only because lack of funding, not lack of efficacy or efficiency. A is that agro mining has been used in small scale operations in the 90s with great success. One study found that agro mining can extract more than 85% of all element deposits in an area without ever breaking ground. The plant is substantial. Total value of imports the U.S. spent on REs in 2020 was $170 million. Towards agro mining is a sustainable, poses exponential fewer environmental hazards by using hyperaccumulator plants. The process bypasses the need to chemically separate the pure ore from surrounding materials. Instead, pure ore is available once plants are incinerated. B is no need to open a physical mine to retrieve any form of deposit, which preserves local ecosystems. Hyperaccumulating plants can produce high yields of rare earth elements with a soil concentration of the mineral that is now as low as 0.1%. C is plants can become customized to diverse climates. There are over 4,450 species that are hyperaccumulators of cerium and yttrium alone that thrive in a variety of climates. These agro mining does not replace food crops or disrupt agricultural production in Greece. For example, hyperaccumulators can be grown alongside olive trees, and they increase crop yields by improving soil quality. Most hyperaccumulator plants are extremely nutrient efficient, so they don't require fertilizers. It can also rehabilitate where established mines have already disrupted the environment. A current mining system employs strip mining that decimates ecosystems and leaves the soil and landscape barren. Agro mining provides initial vegetative stabilization with the added advantage of a longer-term income stream. In New Caledonia, for example, co-planting of a hyperspecies with a nitrogen fixing plant species such as Fabaceae, like the scientific name, I have no clue how to say it, has been conceived as a viable option for getting rehabilitation starting on mine spoils. 5 is according to the USGS, there are signed significant deposits of REs in 14 states, but not all use agro mining. Our affirmative would work at 2 sites in Florida, 2 sites in California. These are the only locations where the conditions are fertile enough for agro mining plants to grow right now. Advantage 1 is uniqueness. One, current mining techniques are used hazardous chemicals like polluted water supplies in the environment. Rare earth mining has severely damaged surface vegetation, causing soil erosion, pollution, acidification, reduce or even eliminated food crop output. Bees mining plants typically produce wastewater with concentration of radioactive residues. 2 is there are 2 primary methods for mining, both release tested toxic chemicals. First is going to be removing topsoil and creating a leaching pond where chemicals are added to the extracted earth and to separate materials. These are full of toxic chemicals that leak into groundwater. Bees. The second method of drilling is drilling using pipes and hose pumps and pumping chemicals into the earth. 3 is mines and ores are deposits locally located disproportionately on wait, you don't need that. Okay. 3 is the ecosystems already fragile from the effects of climate change. A is climate change interacts with other human structures such as development to add more stress on ecosystems
of the human body and how it can be morphed, which means it's necessarily key. The third argument is tantalum is key to electronic equipment such as capacitors, resistors, making tellurium also key to developing memory devices, making both of these elements integral to the specific technology. The Z point is the impacts. The first argument is that environmental destruction necessarily causes extinction. The A point is that necessarily without decreases significantly the total number of CO2 in the atmosphere, it causes rampant ocean acidification, which kills off ocean fisheries, which the majority of the population rely on for sustenance. It causes resource wars that eventually cause extinction. The B point also is generally just as things get hotter and hotter, it causes massive wildfires in the Amazon, which is a huge carbon buffer for the entire Earth, which eventually makes all life untenable as things just get hotter and hotter and cause feedback loops that only make things worse. The C point is that you should prefer extinction as a prior question. It is literally inevitable in the status quo, which means that it comes which means that maintaining the human rights is always going to be a prior question. The last argument is that necessarily that this is the key internal to resolving for structural violence. The point is that the move towards the removal of the corporeal body and introduction of the cyborg vision allows us to resolve for things like identity conflicts that cause massive divides in the status quo, because it allows us to remove the eradication of difference through transhumanistic technology. Underview. The role of the battle is to endorse the fiat policy option that produces the best material conditions. Once again, the role of the battle is to endorse the fiat policy option that produces the best material conditions. The first argument is fiat. The ace of points that fiat is a test of hypothetical advocacy, advanced speech acts. The base of points that fiat being illusory doesn't matter. Mirages, dreams, and hallucinations are all illusory, but they can still motivate action and create affective responses. The second argument is that fiat is good. The ace of points that fiat allows the oppressed to make demands upon the state independent of the state and conceive of a world where their demands are met. The base points that is critical to resolving harms. The question of it ought not be how great a utopia would be, but rather what material changes we can do to move towards that utopia. The ace of points that action spec is key. Fiat intrinsically requires the specification of who will take what action, absent identification of those two elements. It's impossible to predict outcomes, which means you vote an AF on presumption. The third argument is that policymaking is good. The ace point that policymaking is both particular and structural. It's not reform or revolution, it's reform and revolution, which justifies the perm as a key starting point. The beast point also is that states are not static. There are organizations of power, which means it's only a question of what that power is used for. And we're open to flex.
I see a neuroplasticity supercharge all of our impacts. If you conclude that learning about potential plans to stop genocides is good, you vote for the affirmative. Number 2. The resolution poses the question of whether the United Nations should amend the conventional alternatives to state violence. Means that there's a fascism internal impact to any rejection of the affirmative, and Trump and Brexit make this uniquely key. Lack of engagement breeds material violence and fascist takeover. We also say is C, obsession with magnitude reflects a privileged conception of security that locks in the status quo. The 1% risk of any impact is methodological blackmail that prevents you from stopping to very real genocide. This creates a perpetual divide between us and the enemy that means constantly.
I'm going to do 3 off, and then I'm going to put the framework on top, and then the rest of the case is top down.
Because they refuse to consider Tigray individuals to be.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Because that's an official statement. They consider the Tigray individuals to be impure.
Yeah, they literally say that they're impure and that they are not worthy of any type of recognition. Why would you give a back channel to someone that you feel is subhuman or non-human?
Competing interpretations is is key to prevent judgment intervention disaster, because we know that we need to understand the parameters of the PMC before we're able to have the rest of the debate. The first is that UN credibility. The first argument that UN international credibility is low. The errors as of December 2020, about a quarter of countries haven't paid their dues. The unpaid dues in 2020 resulted in a budget shortfall of $5.1 billion. This hampered the UN's ability to conduct operations.
Children attempts to paper over the inherent gap in signification, generated structural violence against Korean employee points the fantasy of non-lacking child is impossible for the heteronormative society to refuse acknowledging the possibility of such equality and queerness as a barrier to realization of fantasies such as the queer body is constructed and enjoying expensive the child will be born. So politics of futurity valorizes reproductive heterogeneous sex subordinated gaze that's nothing more than meaningless acrobatics. The C point is a refusal of the queerness to occupy single stable category perceived as a threat to stability. The D point is look to the discourse on A's and
are done against them. Things like Guantanamo Bay, where we just abduct people and commit massive amounts of violence against them and strip them of their autonomy and dehumanization, means that the affirmative not only can never solve for its own impacts and does nothing, but is an actually harmful way to think about the world and imagine fiat being carried out. Second, we're going to say that they have no solvency. Just because you destroy some land underneath some buildings,
move to another building.
They just either move to another building, and also you're still destroying indigenous land. There could be people buried under those buildings. You don't know the sanctity of the ground they were built on. You are just destroying indigenous land. There are only 2 sites in the U.S. That's not going to solve water famine in lower income nations.
on the first interpretation, the articulation here is going to be we say that we are, like, our definition of REs is necessarily going to be things that are hard to find, are fractionally difficult to find in the Earth surface. We say that REs are literally fractionally uncommon or hard to find in the United States, which is probably why there's a shortage right now. They say that it doesn't matter because there's different starting point definition. But no, we say that interpretation is absolutely a question.
On this logic, we know that the queer can reproduce and instead of folding them into their conception of futurity. Two implications: one, their biologist logic denies the progress you had to reframe the queer, which is the same logic they indict. Or two, the all can't solve because it assumes the only action that denies queer futurity, but futurity is key to secure material gains for the queer. Four, anti-black is a better explanation of state logic. The idea that queer is the location of logic, that dire state action assumes that the queer is an intelligible identity, but this fails as an analysis of race. Demarcation always comes first when framing humanism because the black body is an object by which you base your understanding of human and non-human. Two implications: one, they're all selves because it misdiagnoses the base of humanism, which undermines who is otherized. Second, the black body is unaccounted for throughout their method because black futurity is key to gratuitous violence, meaning that they recreate anti-black violence, and that's the reason to reject on face. The third point here is that we say we're wrong if you want, but Lacan is a huge portion of your literature.
Another counterstander here. What's our counterstander? The next counterstander is going to be forward thinking. We say that our method is always going to lead less traditional methods. We say this is particularly going to be key to solve agro climate crises, i.e. if we never move past things like traditional mining, we're always going to continue to replicate harms which independently impacts how to advocate skills and how we advocate for things in the real world, which means that we continue to perpetuate harms in the real world and move on to the app. All of their shit on the app is going to be defense at best. Start with the articulation that is toxic to plants. Well, they completely miss the interpretation of how this necessarily works. One, you should have read more research studies. Apparently we did because we found the ones that weren't just about nickel. That's going to be the articulation that we give some specific plant we can't fucking pronounce, but this particularly is going to be able to extract landium. They say that this is going to be toxic to plants. We say it's like toxic if you just like no, we say it's not toxic to all plants, probably just to some. But the second articulation is going to be that the plants necessarily refine it, i.e. the plant the plant like pulls out the REE. It's a purification process. Yeah, it's a mining and purification process, which probably means that we resolve back for this. They say which probably means that we resolve back for this. Anyways, this is defense at best. We're not just talking about nickel. We literally give you 3 examples of like yttrium and other shit. Go down to their no solve. They say we know solve because we can do 4 sites, but they even say articulation of these 4 sites are necessarily where the vast majority of REs are specifically in the California areas that are going to be the main site right now, which means that these are where the wastewater is being generated.
Policy, but the way of thinking that you are necessarily ingrained in is still governmental policy thinking, which is necessarily going to be a bad thing. But we're kicking the chaos point, which is we're not going for a chaotic solvency anymore. You can extend across that chaos doesn't solve, and that isn't our method. I'll get more on the method part of the debate. We aren't going for chaos anymore, so a lot of their argumentation is no longer going to work. They say the next argument they have on framework here is about you use the United States and how the U.S. already stripped the land of its value in the past. This is really somebody's not going to work at the point in which the D.C., the District of Columbia, which is not the USFG, owns the land. And second, saying that the value is already gone from the land is probably super offensive against indigenous people who do value that land as it is right now, and that it still does exist as their land. Saying the value is already been stripped is a form of like reification of settler colonial thing to begin with. Go to the links. Yeah, go to the links. You can extend across this route as a gosh darn simulation that this denatures and corrupts debate into an experience where normal speech acts become a mockery of themselves. I.e., the 1AC is a mockery of decoloniality instead of an actual act of resistance. It's just another way for the world of propaganda to interpolate us as actors. This round is simulation because we've imagined it before and just mindlessly repeating pre-written scripts. We've debated y'all on this sort of thing, specific on Rees 3 times. All of you.
That their articulation is going to be that the defense industry is necessarily going to get better because they have more REs, but the turn here is going to be consumer confidence. We say that right now the status quo inflation is necessarily being driven by
Can we get text, the counter interpretation rather?
Cool.
I'm bad at flowing. You said that the impact of the UN credibility dissad was inevitable, right?
I said there's
no uniqueness for the IPI. Also, fairness comes first because it's used evaluation of the round, i.e. the only reason why we read this counterplan in the first place was because we had to, because your app is topical, is because you forced us to have to engage with it. So fairness comes first. Second inter. You have undercovered the fairness offense, extend the interpretation proper mining means the extraction of minerals from the earth's surface via mines. The violation contextualizes the the violations that you extract via plants. So the argument is that plants are distinct from mines. You have a wheat meat that says that plants are functionally mines, but a couple of responses. Number one is that, remember, the violation contextualizes the interpretation. The reason why is that the plants we contextualize via the violation that plants and mines are distinct, i.e. all of these standards level offenses reasons why plants are still unfair, even if it technically meets the definition of mine. Prefer the spirit of the interpretation, because otherwise you get frivolous wheat meats that don't respond to the substance of the standards level offense that we are reading. Second is that the standards are still dissets to your wheat meat, because even if your wheat meat is
break is necessarily now in a world the United States necessarily has the capabilities, but you take away drugs, which are key to power projection and key to the understanding of the United States as a global hegemon, which indicates there is absolutely linked. This decreases the perceptions. This you might go for the articulation that the United States pulls out, which resolves any form of hegemony in the world. The United States hegemony is necessarily predicated on perception, i.e. how NATO necessarily views the United States as the link articulation that is going to be killer on the affirmative. You've conceded the credibility is the key internally to the United States hegemony. I'll do some work here. The first is going to be power projection is necessarily predicated on the ability to work with allies. Turkey houses B-61 gravity bombs within its borders, which indicates the ability for the United States to communicate, and the ability for the United States to power project through other countries indicates the only method the United States to have to be able to be a global hegemon is the order. This doesn't matter in a world where you've conceded that we get our impacts in the first place, particularly because number one, the ability for United Nations to represent, or the like ability for us to make predictions is predicated on the public channels. You say that there is mass genocide occurring now. We'll indicate when that mass genocide is necessarily on CNN, and that people are necessarily being able to make predictions. I.e., that you say yourself that the Tigray region is necessarily distinct from Ethiopia, and that they cannot communicate, indicates that we can make predictions about the way in which the international order works. You've also conceded Gabe's articulation that nuts theory, nuclear utilization targeting strategy necessarily is the way the United States operates, which indicates there is absolutely a potential for great war, great power war, and nuclear escalation, which means that you are way behind in the.
Get my other papers out of my. Alrighty. If we're all good, beginning now, you're gonna vote. You're clearly gonna vote for T because we are winning fairness over education offense, and there's no term. They are not winning any terminal defense on our page. But let's start with this CP. They're going to try and get up and go for this IVI.
There's too many concessions about the particular extinction level magnitude impacts that get conceded. In order, you've done you did too little work extending your impact weighing out of the PMC. You're always going to be preferring extinction in the first place. In a world where you absolutely caused a great power war, and you concede all articulation about how great power war absolutely is possible in a world where the United States utilizes low yield tactical nuclear weapons in a way of posturing in order to ensure that they're willing to first strike other countries, indicates this is absolutely a probability. But also, you've entirely cold conceded this sort of pullout scenario, i.e. that even if just the U.S. pulls out there, it's still going to trigger an arms race to develop these Seaburn weapons, which is instantly going to kill us all. Because once the first person develops that, they're going to realize that the other person's catching up, so they're going to have to use it or lose it to maintain their comparative advantage. This is two massive impacts that both trigger worse forms of genocide, which means that we don't even have to win impact weighing to win this round, but also cause extinction, which is the biggest impact in this round, which means you are always voting neg. Let's go to the interview. This is where the collapse is going to be, because this was the majority of their PMC. They're going to go for this articulation that they're a particularism, which means that even though there's specific bad things that happen, it doesn't work. The we mean is going to shield us because you consider you're not garnering any offense extra topically, but more importantly, you are particularly bad, particularly because the case turn is on fire in a world where you increase genocide not only via Seaburns but also within Nagorno-Karabakh. Because of the increase of conventional weapon usage, you're always going to be much worse. This indicates it's never going to.
Also, they're like not competitive because they can both be true with this
forms of how like the state is able to use these machines and build these machines and use capitalism to enact violence against other individuals. It's how we can destroy that. Yeah, okay. It's how we can destroy that. Onto the perm. Extend across the perm, like it's perm do both. Their only argument in the block is about how we can't do both revolution and also because we utilize revolutionary fiat because our ethos is incoherent. There's absolutely no warrant as to how our ethos is incoherent. They say we have to smash they have to smash the symbols of the empire. We say that the affirmative and its use of revolutionary fiat is a form of smashing a literal symbol of the empire, which is the Capitol Hill, which means that our ethos is definitely consistent. This is the literal round.
Good round, y'all.
Destroy what you're doing in the block. But I'm sure it's under consideration. Okay, great. I have a 320. If that's okay with everybody. Okay. Moreover, they say conventional war is uniquely worse in the Tigray and Ethiopian continent, but they can necessarily consider organizational warrants about how specifically that the Ethiopian government is necessarily only able to cause a genocide and start a war because of these drones, because it allows them to bypass any coordination problems, because the Ethiopian government is using local organization led by local chieftains. This is the warrants coming out of the PMC necessarily means that no conventional war is going to happen because the Ethiopian government cannot win that war because they do not have the capabilities absent that stopping drones stopping drones allows ISIS K to arise in Afghanistan. That is a link turn. The terminalization of that disadvantage was great power war and miscalculation and extinction, which means that we're winning a link turn about how those are specifically going to be resolving in the status quo, which means that the only impacts in today's debate are necessarily that. Moreover, they say that research strategies were not able to specifically weigh, but we don't need to win our research strategies necessarily good because we're winning on a probability frame that you're always going to evaluate. Moreover, we're earning on magnitude too because they don't have an argument because they double turn themselves on the disadvantage. Moreover, they say that mass genocide is occurring now and that nuts theory is able to resolve, but we've given you way more warrants on this question. So we're winning an impact turn to their impact framing. So it's going to be super simple.
Even if nuts theory is going to resolve, since they've conceded that extinction is inevitable under the ISIS.
Since they've conceded that extinction by a great power war is inevitable under the ISIS disadvantage, that we're winning a link turn there. That means that this is a non-impact because it happens both in the status quo and in the world of the affirmative. Not reading a counterplan was the worst decision the LOC necessarily made. So let's go to the disadvantage. Number one, we're winning a terminal defense on the uniqueness question about how U.S. credibility is low right now because of Ukraine. They're not able to stop that genocide. That is predictive. Moreover,